Hi everyone, today we're checking out Metallica's Blackened off of the And Justice for All album. This track has been a personal favorite of mine since I was a kid, so I've been really looking forward to putting this together for you. I think that it's going to be a pretty long video, so let's jump right into it. We're in standard tuning. So the track fades in, and what you're hearing for the first 35 seconds or so are backwards guitars. So they've been reversed from the way that they were originally played. So let's go ahead and play those original parts. I'm going to play them unreversed so that you can see and hear what was originally played. And then I'll reverse the audio for you as well so that it sounds like the album and you can hear exactly how this is all going to come together if you're trying to recreate this yourself. Here we go with the original unreversed parts, starting with the rhythm guitar. So there are all of the original unreversed parts. Now let's go ahead and play the audio reversed so that it sounds like the album. So there you go, guys, all of the original unreversed guitar parts as well as the reversed audio. Have fun putting this together and recreating it yourself. Now let's get going into the main riff of the song. Here's a quick performance and then we'll break it down. Okay, so this main riff can be tricky to get up to speed, guys, so be sure to take your time with it. Let's talk about how we open up this section. Okay, we start with a B flat power chord on the first fret of the A string. Okay, now put a palm mute on, second and third frets on the low E string. Now hit the second fret on the A string, third fret on the A string, and you want to do a quick down up, okay? There's a quick little double pick on that third fret, down to the first fret on the low string. Now, end it with an E power chord stab, and you can do that with your second finger. If you do it with your second finger like James does, you don't have to shift back and forth to play the riff. Makes it a bit easier. Okay, so that whole little opening phrase. Now we jump up to the 7th fret and we have this. Okay, that's one time through the riff. Now the riff is 2 measures of 7/4, but keep in mind that these odd time signatures are usually additive, which means that instead of feeling a straight 7 beats, we're really feeling 2 rhythmic figures that add up to 7. And in the case of this riff, it's a very strong 4 plus 3 feel. So 4 plus 3 equals 7, right? So the first half of the measure has a nice strong 4-beat feel. Second half of the measure is grouped into 3. So that's how I'm going to break this riff down just to keep it easy to understand. So our first 4 beats goes like this. Okay, so we're going to chug on the low E and then hit the E on the 7th fret of the A string. So we're just bouncing back and forth between 2 E's an octave apart. Up to the 8th fret on A, back to the 7th. Right, so there's our 4 beats. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Can be tricky too that those are all on off beats, all those notes that we're stabbing, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So take your time with that and really work with a metronome or a drum machine at a slow tempo until you've dialed that feel in. Now the second half of the measure, next 3 beats to add up to 7. Okay, we're again alternating those E's on the low E and the 7th fret of the A. Up to the 8th fret on D, back to the 7th fret on A. And there's our first measure of 7/4. Right, and notice how it does have that strong 4 plus 3 feel. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay, so you might want to count or think of it that way rather than counting up to 7, because counting up to 7 can be a bit cumbersome. Now, our second half of the riff goes like this. Okay, and that's all elements that we've talked about. The first 4 beats, same as the first measure. And then we just tack on that little figure that we started with. And again, it has a very nice 4 plus 3 feel. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and, right? So there's our first rotation through the riff. I'll just play the whole thing nice and slow. Okay, now the second time through the riff is exactly the same, except instead of coming up to that 8th fret on the D string, that highest note, we're going to substitute the 6th fret on the low string in. Okay, so other than that, it's 100% exactly the same. So we start off, go down to the 6th fret on that E string, back to the 7th fret. So here it is again. Right? And the rest of that riff, exactly the same. It's just that one note that's changing. The third time through the riff, again, we're going to bounce back up to that 8th fret on the D string. So it's just alternating. The first time, the high note on the D string. Second time, substitute the low E string, the 6th fret on the E string. Back to the high note the third time. Back to the low string the fourth time, and so on. Okay, so the third time through the riff is exactly the same as the first time. Now, the fourth time through the riff, we go to that low note, but we just have a different ending, okay? So the fourth time through the riff is our different time. It goes like this. Okay, so slightly different here. We start off 100% exactly the same. Okay, now it's written, it's a measure of 15/8 to be technical about it, but we're just adding one extra palm mute in at the end. So this whole measure is the same. Right? It's just one extra palm mute there that gives you time to jump down to the G power chord to finish this off. And that having that palm mute in there actually makes it easier. So you don't have to go, oh, 15/8, that seems complicated. Once you get it up to speed and playing it, actually it's easier to play it with this extra 8th note in there. Okay, so we've got this measure of 15/8 down to a G power chord on the 3rd fret. Okay, so that's a down, down, up, down on that G. Open E, back to the G. Then repeat that G. Open E, down half step to F sharp. Okay, so it goes like this. Now we just go back and play that riff 4 more times, exactly as we learned it, to finish this section off. We'll just be alternating that note again. The first time through the riff, we'll play the 8th fret on the D string, and then the second time through, the 6th fret on the E string, back up to the D for the 3rd time, and then back down to the low E for the 4th time. Okay, so I'll just play those last 4 rotations nice and slow, pointing out that note. D string. E string. D string. E string. And then we get into our next riff, which also functions as the verse riff. Okay, so now that we've covered that main riff and we've covered the whole intro, let's slow it down to some scrolling tabs so you can play along. And now we get into a new riff, which also functions as our verse riff. So here's a playthrough of that. So the rest of the intro and most of the verse consists of one repeating measure of 6/4. So let's talk about that measure. Sounds like this. Okay, now since it's a measure of 6/4, we'll split it up into 2 groups of 3 beats. So the first 3 beats, super easy, just E power chord. Okay, so stab an E power chord, and then 5 chugs on that E. Right, 1 and 2 and 3 and again, you can hit that E power chord with your second finger, just like James does, to prevent you from having to hop back and forth using the first finger throughout the riff. So it makes it a little bit easier. Now our second 3 beats, okay, kind of starts off the same as that last riff that we had with the B flat power chord stab, first fret of the A string, down to 2 and 3 on the low string, up to 2 on the A string, But now instead of going up to the 3rd fret like we did in the last riff, we're going to go down to the 1st fret, down to the 3rd fret on the low string, and that's the beats 4 and 5 and 6 and right there's our 6. And then just repeat it. All right, really cool riff. One of my favorite Metallica riffs of all time. I just think that one really rocks. Okay, so that repeats 4 times to finish off the intro, and then the verse kicks in, and we're going to repeat that another 3 times respectively before it changes. So the verse kicks in, we play it 1 time, 2nd time, 3rd time, right? And that's where it changes. So the 3rd time, now start it the same at B flat, 2, 3 on the low string, but now go right to the 1st fret on the A string, down to the 2nd fret of the low string, and then a G power chord, 3rd fret of that low string. Okay, so a little syncopation there. We're actually changing to that G power chord on the end of 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1 and 2 and 3 and... Okay, so nice and slow one more time. Okay, then hop down, play it the same as before. And then repeat for the 2nd half of the verse. Right? Just it's going to be the same as the 1st half of the verse. Let's just play that 1st half of the verse nice and slow one more time for you. And then we're into the 2nd half of the verse, which is 100% the same as the 1st half of the verse, except for the last beat and a half is just a random slide up the low string. Okay, so the 2nd half of the verse, again, we're going to go to that G chord. Okay, so just randomly slide up that low string at the end there. B flat, 2nd, 3rd fret on the low string, and then pick it twice as you slide. As you just randomly slide up that low string. And I like to target just the 12th fret, try to hit that. Sounds nice, that E, because we're in E minor, so you're hitting the root of the song. But, you know, you don't have to be too fussy about that. Just get a nice random slide in there. And then we get into that riff again. That one. And that's the exact same as we learned it, okay? So it's a 2-measure riff again, so that those 2 measures exactly the same as we learned it, going to the high note the 1st time. And the 2nd time, we only play the 1st measure and we go to that low note on the low string. Okay, and then we slide down, chug on the E power chord, just 2 beats, jumping up to start our chorus. Okay, so that little bit, the connector between the verse and the chorus goes like this. Okay, and then we're into our chorus. So now that we've played the whole verse, let's slow it down with some scrolling tab. So there's the verse. The next thing that we have to talk about is the chorus. Here's a playthrough of that. Now the chorus gives us a nice break from all this really fast down picking that we've been doing up till now. So it's easier to pull off. Starts off with these E power chords. Okay, so that measure of 2/4, chugging on E, jump up to an E power chord on the 7th fret of the A string. And you can include that low E string underneath it for a nice big beefy 3-string power chord. Now we have this. Okay, so some fast hopping here with the power chords. Down to the 5th fret A power chord on the low string, palm mute that twice. Jump up to the 5th fret on the A string D power chord and just stab that once. Then do the same thing on the 3rd fret. 2 palm mutes on the low 3rd fret power chord, G. Jump up to C, 3rd fret of the A string, stab that. Back to the G. Fall half a step to F sharp on the 2nd fret. Okay, so far we have this. Now we go back up to G. To an E power chord. So go to that G, down, up, down, twice, really fast. Okay. To an E power chord. Then we repeat this idea that we had a second ago. It's just slightly different the second time. Okay, so again, the 5th fret's A to D. And then G to C, but this time we hit C twice. Back to G. And then end on that F sharp again. And then we come back up to G. Okay, and that's the end of chorus 1. So that's down, up, down on the G power chord, open E, and then 2 stabs on that F sharp. Okay, so the whole first chorus, nice and slow, goes like this. And then we connect that with the verse with that main riff. And then we're into verse 2. Okay, so that's chorus 1. Now let's just briefly talk about chorus 2 because it's the same except for the end. We tag a little bit extra onto the end because we're getting into the bridge section where the tempo slows down. Okay, so I'll just play the chorus number 2 here really quick. Goes like this. And then we're into the bridge. Okay, so as you can see, ends the same way as chorus 1. Then we do this. But chorus 2 does it again. Fall half a step to the 1st fret F power chord. And then we're into the bridge with a ringing E power chord. Okay, so that's the only difference between chorus 1 and 2. Chorus 2 just has a couple extra little measures on there. Okay, so now that we've covered the chorus, let's play it nice and slow with some scrolling tab for you. And there's the chorus, guys. Let's talk about the bridge now. Here's a playthrough, and then we'll break it down. So the bridge starts off with what I consider to be a 4-measure riff that repeats. There is a slight variation on it every other time, but if you consider it to be a 4-measure riff, it makes this bridge really easy to understand. Okay, so we get into the bridge with an E power chord that rings for 6 beats, okay? And then into the bridge. And now here's our riff. Okay, there's our 4 measures. So let's talk about that. The first thing we're going to do, okay, so open E, 5 and 6, up to 7 on the A string with 4 more E chugs. Okay. Then we have, okay, so that's 5, 6 on the low string again, 8, 7 on A, followed by 4 more chugs on the E. Then repeat the first idea that we had, open 5, 6 on the low string, up to 7 on A. Now we have a power chord. Okay, now that power chord is actually E flat with the 5th B flat in the bass. So what we're going to do is slide into the 6th fret on the low string, and we'll want to be barring the 6th fret. What you'll have at the end is barring the 6th fret on the low string and the A string. Use your pinky like James does on the 8th fret of D. So like I said, it's an E flat with B flat in the bass. Okay, so slide into the 6th fret on the low string, and now get 6 and 8 on the A and the D string. Okay, so that's what that chord is. So there's the 4-measure riff. I'll just play it again nice and slow. And before we move on, I just want to make mention of one really cool little accent that's in there on the recording. He slides in on that very first rotation. Okay, so there's a slide on the low string up to the 6th fret, and then a pull off to the open E to start that riff. Okay? It's only there that very first time, but it really does add to that start of the riff, really kicks it in, right? So it might be something that you really want to duplicate. Okay, so there's our 4-measure riff. Now let's talk about the next time it repeats. There's a slight variation. It starts the same. Now here's the variation. Okay, so we're going to slide into 7, do it with your second finger, 7 on the A string, down to 6 on the low string, jumping up an octave to 8 on D, back to 7 on A. Okay. So they just substituted that instead of playing this, right? They played. It's just a substitution. So far, the second time through this riff. Okay, then we go back to open 5, 6 on the low string, up to 7 on A. And then that same chord that we had the first time. Right, that same E flat to B flat in the bass. So that second time through the riff, exactly the same except for those 4 notes. Right? So it's just a little variation. So that's why I'm viewing it as a 4-measure riff with that variation. Okay, so that is the first 8 measures of the bridge. So let's just play that nice and slow for you, because that gets us through pretty much all of it. Okay, then when the vocals kick in, it's the same thing. You play those 8 measures underneath the vocals, and then we're going to get into the next part, which goes like this. Okay, so it's really just chugging on an E power chord for the majority of this part. Trickiest part is going to be right at the beginning, where we have to get a couple of bends on the bottom string. So go to the 5th fret on the bottom string. You want to bend that a little bit, open E, and then bend that 5th fret again. Right? And then jump to an E power chord. And then from there, you're just going to hold that power chord all the way to the end, where we're going to go up to that same E flat with B flat in the bass power chord that we had throughout the bridge so far. So nice and slow. That whole little couple measures goes like this. And then we do that same idea again. This time though, we just have a quick open E, one bend on the 5th fret. And then we do that idea again, except we're going to go the open with the 5th fret bend to an F sharp power chord. So that's the 2nd fret of the low string, but it's the same rhythm that we had. We're just now playing that F sharp instead of E. Okay, and we have a new power chord at the end of that. We're just taking what we did with that E flat with B flat in the bass, moving it up a whole step. So it's an F power chord now with C in the bass. So you're going to slide into the 8th fret of the low string. Make sure you're also barring the 8th fret of A. Use your pinky to get the 10th fret of D. Okay, and that's the whole bridge. All of that repeats 100% exactly the same again. The second time, nothing's changed. And then from there, we get into the harmony guitars, which we'll tackle in the next section. But now that we've went through everything you need to be able to play through this bridge, let's slow it down with some scrolling tab for you. So after the bridge, we get into the harmony lines. So here's a playthrough of the rhythm guitar underneath that. We'll break that down first. So I just wanted to tackle this section by itself just due to the timing. We'll talk about the timing here in a second, but let's just go through the chords. It's pretty simple. We start on an E power chord at the 7th fret of the A string. Okay, so we're just going to fall down that A string. Start on the 7th fret, E power chord. Fall down to the 5th fret, D. 3rd fret, C. 2nd fret, B. And then we're going to come down to the low string, G and F sharp on the 3rd and 2nd frets. Okay? Okay, now we repeat the same rhythmic idea. We're just going to hold, when we get to this B power chord on the 2nd fret of the A string, we just hold that for an extra beat. So we have a slightly different rhythm just at the very tail end of this, but it's going to sound like this. Okay, so we're going to play the E power chord, the low E open power chord here as a substitute for this high one from now on. We'll always hit this E for the rest of this section. All the rest of these are the same. D, C, B, and then again, palm mute that G and F sharp on the low string. Okay, so I'll just give it a quick slow play through here, the whole riff. Okay, now it can be a little bit confusing where beat 1 is if you're not aware of the shifting time signatures. So it's a measure of 4/4 followed by 2/4, then 4/4, then 3/4. You could also think of it as a measure of 6/4 followed by a measure of 7/4. That works, but we'll break it down as 4 plus 2 and then 4 plus 3. So I'll just count this out, and then when you find where beat 1 is, you'll have it. So 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 2, 3, and. Okay, so that's how the riff is felt. That's how you could play it. Like I said, you could count to 6 and then 7, but it's probably easier just to do it the way I showed you. So, you know, I'm not going to beat this to death, but 1, 2, and. We're going to change on the end of 2. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 2, and. Okay, so that's a quick measure going back to beat 1. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 2, 3, and. So as you can see, when we get to that B on the second half of the riff, we're just holding it for an extra beat, which is why we have that measure of 3, 4. But other than that, it's the exact same rhythm. So there's what's going on underneath those harmonies. Let's play it slow with some scrolling tab now. Okay, now we get into the harmony lines. Let's start with the lower one that's typically played by James live. Here it is. So you can view the harmony section as consisting of 4 lines. Each line is 4 measures long, which coincides with the rhythm guitar part that we just had. So the first couple measures goes like this. Okay, we're going to slide into the 12th fret on the low E string with our pinky. Now we have 9 and 10 on A. Okay, so those 3 notes. And we're going to play those 3 notes 3 times. Then up to 12 on A. Then, okay, we want to pick 10 on A, hammer to 12, pull off to 10, pull off to 9. Okay, so just one pick there on those last 4 notes, and the rest is legato. Okay, so our first couple measures sounds like this. Okay, our next couple measures. Okay, so start off with those same notes that we had before, 12 on the low string, 9 and 10 on A. Now jump up to the D string, 7 and 9, down to 10 on A. Back up to the D string, 7, 9, up to 10. Now, same hammer pull trick. Start with picking the 9th fret, hammer to 10, pull off to 9, pull off to 7. Okay, Okay, last two notes there are going to be 10 on the low string, up to 9 on the A string. Okay, so our second couple measures. Okay, that's our first line. Let's put it all together. Okay, now our second line is really easy to go through because it's exactly the same as the first line. The only thing different is the last two notes. So I'll play the second line and then quickly show you those last two notes. Okay, so as you can see, rather than 10 on the low string, 9 on A, we're going to play 9 on A up to 7 on D. So it's just those last two notes in that line, the only difference between lines 1 and 2. Now line 3, let's talk about that. It goes like this. Okay. I played the whole line this time because there's a lot of repetition. We don't really have to even talk about the first half. It's the same notes that we finished off lines 1 and 2 with 10 on the A string, 7 and 9 on the D string. Right, same little trill thing there at the end. Start with those notes again. Up to 7 and 9 on the G string. Down to 9 on the D string. Right, so there's a little roll there across the 9th fret of G and D. Back up to the G string, 7 and 9, 11. Now we want to go. Okay, so pick 9, hammer to 11, pull off to 9, pull off to 7. Now, last two notes, we want to get 7 on D, 7 on G. Okay, so there's line 3. Let's put that together nice and slow. Last line, line 4, here it is. Okay, again, we're starting line 4 with the same notes that we ended line 3 with. So 9 on D, 7, 9, and 11 respectively there on G. Now up to 7 and 8 on B, 9 on G, back up to 7 and 8 on B, 10 on B, and then we want to pick 8, hammer to 10, pull off to 8, pull off to 7 on the B string. And then, again, we have the 7th fret on G, 7th fret on B, 2 notes on the 7th fret there. And our last note is E on the 9th fret of G. Okay, so the fourth and final line goes like this. Okay, now that we've went through the whole thing, let's slow it down with some scrolling tab. And now we have to talk about the higher harmony, which is typically played by Kirk live. So here's a playthrough of that. So not a lot of new stuff to talk about with this guitar part. Most of this we've already covered with the first harmony guitar, so we'll just blast through this line by line. We're starting off with that position, 10 on the A string, 7, 9, and 10 on the D string. Right, start there again. Jumping up to the G string, 7 and 9. Right at the very end, we're going to jump down to the A string, 9, 7 on D. Right, those are our last two notes. Let's put line 1 together nice and slow. Okay, line 2 is exactly the same except for the last two notes again. So here's line 2. Right, as you can see, those last two notes are different. 7 on D, 7 on G, versus the first line where we had 9 on A, 7 on D. Okay, moving on to line 3 goes like this. Right, again, nothing new here. We've already talked about these. 9 on D, 7, 9, 11 on G. Up to 7, 8, 10 on B. Stay on the G and B strings. Now, only new stuff that we really have to talk about here. We're starting on that 9th fret of G and 7, 8, 10 on B. Now jump up 10 and 12 on B. Down to 12 on G. Back up to 10, 12 on B. 13. So you want to pick 12, hammer to 13, pull off to 12, pull off to 10. Now come down to 11 on G. Back up to 10 on B. And our last note is 12 on G. So let's put line 4 together nice and slow. Okay, let's put that second harmony guitar together with some scrolling tab. And now we have to talk about the solo, so let's cover the rhythm underneath the solo first. Here's a playthrough of that, and then we'll break it down. Okay, so a lot going on underneath the solo, a lot of little riffs and moving parts. So we start off with this. Okay, we're just hitting a low E palm mute and then alternating a G and F sharp power chord. So the 3rd fret power chord and the 2nd fret power chord on the low string. So hit that low E to G, to the on the 3rd fret, then low E to the F sharp on the 2nd fret. Okay, so, and we're going to do that 3 times. Now, on the 4th time, hit the open E, back to the F sharp on the 2nd fret, and then come up to the 2nd and 3rd frets on the A string and do a hammer, okay? And that's the whole riff that repeats at the beginning of the solo, nice and slow. Okay, that plays 7 times. On the 7th time, instead of doing the hammer from B to C, you'll actually do a B to C power chord, right? Just, there's a brief little pause where we're going to change tempo, and using the actual, the full power chord really gives a little extra something there. Okay, so I mean, you could do the power chords, the B and C power chords at the end of every rotation, but the way it is on the recording is just the hammer and saving those power chords till the very last rotation. Okay, so I'll just play that nice and slow. 1 rotation with just the hammer, and then 1 with the power chords. Okay, then we get into some other stuff that we've talked about. I'm not going to break all of this down if we've already talked about it again. You can find this stuff in the breakdown of the chorus and even in the intro. So we get into this. Okay, already talked about that stuff. And then we have a new riff, goes like this. Okay. A lot of bouncing off of that low E palm mute. So we're going to hit the low E palm mute and alternate that with the 7th fret on the A string. So you do that 4 times, low E, 7th fret, low E, 7th fret. And again, this is a very offbeat sort of thing, so it might take a little while to feel that. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Then we come down to the 5th fret on the A string, alternate that with the low E. Okay, come up to the 8th fret on the A string and alternate that with the low E. Back to the 7th fret, and only do that 3 times. And then for the last beat, we're going to have a hammer from 5 to 7. So that last measure. Okay, let's put that riff together nice and slow. And then we play that whole riff exactly how we learned it a 2nd time before we get into the next part of the rhythm. Okay, getting into that next part, elements we've already talked about. Chugging on the low E with the 7th fret on the A string, those 2 strings together, and then down to an open E power chord, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and so 4 chugs on each. And then we're getting into what we've covered in the chorus. Repeat that idea. Now we have a measure of 5/8 here. Before we get into the next part. Okay, so, it's a little strange measure there, a 5/8. It's all on the G power chord, 3rd fret of the low string, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So down, 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 down. That's all you have to do, just palm mute that. And then get into this last part, wrapping up the rhythm under the solo. Okay, so we're going to start with that idea of alternating the low E palm mute with the 7th fret on the A string. Do that 3 times. Then hit the 6th fret on the low string the 4th time, up to that 7th fret again on the A string. And then hit the 5th fret of the low string and the 7th fret of the A. So we have that power chord shape. And then do that 4 times for our second measure. All right, so let's put that together, our first 2 measures of this riff. Just take that idea down to the 3rd fret of the low string and 5th fret of A and do that for 1 whole measure again. right? So you'll alternate those notes 4 times. Come up to the 3rd fret on the A string, 5th fret on D, alternate those 2 notes just twice. Back to 3 on the low string, 5 on A twice. Okay, so there's the first half of this last riff. It goes like this, nice and slow. Now let's start by repeating the idea. The first measure is the same with the open 6 down to 5 at the end. Now, instead of arpeggiating this power chord on 3 and 5, we're just going to palm mute it. Okay, so 8 chugs on there, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Come up to the C power chord, 3 on the A string, 5 on D, 4 chugs on that. Back down to the G power chord, 3 and 5 on the bottom 2 strings. Okay, so let's just put that whole riff, 8 measures together nice and slow for you. And then we're out of the solo into the main riff, and away we go with the rest of the track. So now that we've broken down the whole rhythm underneath the solo, let's play it slow with some scrolling tab. And now we have to talk about the solo, so here's a playthrough of that, and then we'll break it down. Okay, let's get right into it. The first lick. Okay, we start off with repeating 3 notes, 9 on the G string and 7 and 8 on B. Okay, those 3 notes, and we're going to play them 4 times. What would be the 5th time, you just play the first 2 notes, 9 on G, 7 on B, and then slide up to 12 on B with your first finger. Okay, now once you're on that 12th fret, we're going to fall down the B string with a sequence. So, slide into 12, then hit the 13th fret twice. Now we go 12, 10, 12, 10, 10, 8, 10, 8, 7, 8. Now we're going to change strings here. 7 on B, 9 on G, back up to 7 on B. Come down to the G string, 9, 7, 9. Then stay on the G string, 7, 6, 7, 6. Okay, you're going to have to slide that first finger the first time down to 6. Down to 7 on D. Sliding up to 9 on D to end it. Okay, so the whole first lick, nice and slow. Okay, now we have a B harmonic minor scale run. Okay, and I see a lot of people move this lick down a string set and play it over a position, but it was here on the recording. If you play it in this position, you can nail every nuance that you hear on the recording. Okay, so let's just take this 2 beats at a time. The first 2 beats. Okay, so we're going to start on the G string. 6, hammer to 7, pull back off to 6. Down to 9 on D, then 6, 7, 9 on G, and then 7 and 8 on B. Okay, so there's our pattern. Now we're going to repeat that pattern just up a string set. Okay, so we're on B, 7, 8, 7, hammer pull, down to 9 on G, 7, 8, stretch out to 11 on B, and then 7 and 9 on the high string. Okay, so there's our first measure, nice and slow. Okay, next 2 beats. Okay, start on the high string, 7, 9, 7, hammer pull, down to 11 on B, 7, 9, 10 on the high string. Now we want to slide our pinky really fast up to 12, back to 10. Okay. Then finish it off. Okay, so we just did that pinky slide. 9, 7, back to 11 on B, 7, 9, 10 on the high string. Slide up to 12, pull off to 9. And that's the end of the lick into the tapping section. Okay, so let's take the whole lick nice and slow. Okay, now we're into the tapping. Okay, so this is one of those licks that's, you know, got an improvised feel to it. It's really difficult, if not right impossible, to duplicate it 100% how it is on the album. But we can get pretty close. So let's just kind of go over the bare bones outline of it, and then I'll show you a few nuances that are in there on the album that you might want to include to get it a little bit closer. Okay, so tap 19 on the high string, and then hammer pull between 9 and 12 with your fretting hand. So you'll tap 3 times. Okay, and then you'll move your fretting hand down to 7 and 9 while your tapping finger goes down to 18. Okay, and you'll play that a few times. Keep in mind, you might have to play this lick many, many times before it starts opening up and you can really feel the rhythm behind it. And that's when you'll really have it and you'll be a little bit more free with it. So no need to be counting how many taps you're doing. Once you really can feel that rhythm, that's the key, right? Okay, so we've got those 2 positions so far. Now we're going to come down to the B string, tap 18, and do the hammer pull thing between 8 and 12. Okay, you do that really approximately 3 times is what fits in there once you've really got it. And then move your fretting hand down to 7, 8, 10, and then your tapping finger down to 17. So it's kind of like you're just rolling between 7, 8, and 10 with your fretting hand while you're tapping the 17th fret. Okay, now come down to the G string, tap 17, off to 9, off to 7, hammer back down to 9. And that's the end of the lick. Let's just put the B and the G string together. Okay, so now the whole bare bone structure of the lick would sound like this, sped up, put together. Okay, there's the overall gist of it. Now, if you want to get it a little bit closer to what's on the album, what you hear is tap 19, 12, pull off to 9. Now reverse that, 19, 9, hammer onto 12. Okay, so we have, and then to get down to this position where we are going back and forth between 7 and 9, you actually want to hit a 10th fret. So you're going to tap 19, 10, 9, slide down to 7. Okay, so it would be like this. Really fast, but that's what you hear. Okay, and then you're going to tap 18, 7, and 9, and you just kind of hear that on the album. It's not, he doesn't really care what order those three notes are in, right? He's just kind of trilling back and forth between them. So you don't have to be concerned. Are you going, 19-7-9 or 19-9-7? Doesn't matter. Just do that for the appropriate amount of time. Okay, now the tail end of that, there's a little bit more on there than what most people add in there. Before we shift to the B string, what you actually want to do is briefly shift down to the 6th fret as well. So after you've kind of trilled between 7 and 9 for a while, what you do is you tap 18 off to 7, slide down to 6, and then 18, 7, 6 again. And then we're going to switch to the B string. Okay, so everything that's on the E string is going to look like this slowed down. And then we get onto the B string. Now, I think there might be a little mistake on the recording, but it's not a big deal because we just had a B flat on the 6th fret here on the high string a second ago. So including the 11th fret on the B string isn't a big deal. But I think he kind of was going for the 12th fret because he immediately corrects that. Because what you hear on the recording is 18, 11, 8. And then you hear 18, 8, 12. So he's corrected that 11th fret up to the 12th. Then you hear, so it's 18, 12, 8, slide down to 7. Right? So there's the 3 taps on the 18th fret there. Now, this is kind of, like I said before, we're just rolling between 7, 8, 10, 8, back and forth between those 3 notes while we're tapping the 17th fret. And then he slows that down to just tapping the 17th fret, 8, and 7. Finishing off on the G string, 9, 7, 9. Okay, so that's the whole lick. Like I said, this might take a while to really get it under your fingers to play it like it is on the album. Might have to play it many, many times, spend a few hours with it until the rhythmic feel behind it really opens up to you. But here's the lick, as best I can, slowed down for you, how it is on the album. Okay, now let's move on. We have a harmony line here. Okay, so you hear 2 guitars playing this. This is the part that he plays live, and it's the more prominent part. So I'll cover the harmony here in a second. Start on the B string, 17th fret, bend that. Bend it a 3rd time. Okay, so you want to bend, release, pull up to 15, back to 17. Okay, so far. Okay, then you want to have a little hammer pull between 15, 17, 15. Immediately going down to 14, and then playing 15 again. Okay, so put that together. Then, okay, we play 14, and then quick 15 to 14 pull off. Down to the G string, 16, 15. Okay, so the first little bit. Now we jump up to the 19th fret on the high string. Okay, so bend that 19th fret twice. Then release it, 19, 18, 15, 14. Back to 15. 15 to 14 pull off. Down to 17 on B. 15 to 14 pull off again on the high string. Down to 15 on the B string that time. Okay. Okay, end it by sliding into 17 on B. up to 14 on the high string. Okay, so let's just put that harmony together. Okay, let's talk about the harmony. It's a higher guitar that you hear, and it goes like this. Okay, so we're just mirroring that lower harmony guitar a fourth higher. So we're starting on the 17th fret of the high E string. So grab that 17th fret, bend it 3 times. All right, that third time, release it, pull off to 15, back to 17, and then quick little hammer pull between 15 and 17, down to 14, back to 15, and then hit 14, 15 to 14 pull off, go down to 17, 16. Okay, so the first half of this higher harmony guitar. Now we jump up. Bend 22 twice. Now unbent 22, 21, 18, 17, back to 18. Now 18, 17 pull off, down to 20, 18 to 17 pull off again on the high string, down to 19 on the B string, and that's the end. Okay, so the second half. Okay, so let's just put that higher harmony guitar together for you nice and slow. Okay, and then you hear that to finish it off, and we're back to one guitar there again. Okay, so we've already talked about sliding into 17 on B, up to 14 on the high string. Now we're just going to repeat 3 notes again. 18 to 14, pull off on the high string, down to 17 on the B string. So those 3 notes. And on the album, you hear that happen 10 times. And that after you've played it 10 times, that last note is the 19th fret on the high string with a nice slide down. And there's the first half of the solo, and the second half of the solo, we increase the tempo, right? There's a tempo change. Okay, so let's tackle the tempo change. The first lick goes like this. Okay, got a little long sequence again down the high string, but it's not too hard to understand, okay? But I start this section off by fretting with my ring finger and my pinky on the 14th frets of the G and the B. So you hit those 2 strings together with those 2 fingers, and then you want to bend them up. Give them a nice vibrato. Okay, so to start this lick, we slide into 22 on B, and then you'll want to use an upstroke to get a 19th fret on the high string. And then we start the run down, okay? So you hear those first 2 notes. Okay, so now the run down is just a very common neoclassical shred guitar sequence where we're falling 4 notes at a time through a scale. Okay, and what we're doing is just falling through the E minor scale down the high string, except we're going to include the 9th fret when we get there, which alludes to Dorian, and Kirk likes to use the Dorian scale a lot, so, you know, no surprise there. Okay, so we're going to start on the 24th fret and fall 4 notes down the E minor scale, so 24, 22, 20, 19. Now just start on the next note of the scale, the 22nd fret, and fall 4. 22, 20, 19, 17. Notice how it's my first finger that's always doing the position shift, right? So the first couple beats of this sequence, just keep this pattern going. 20, 19, 17, 15. 19, 17, 15, 14. 17, 15, 14, 12. 15, 14, 12, 10. 14, 12, 10, 9. Right there, that 9th fret is outside the E minor scale into the E Dorian scale. And then we're going to go 12, 10, 9, 7. Okay, so far, this whole long lick goes like this. Now we have. Okay, bend the 10th fret on the B string twice. Now release it, 10, 8, 7, down to 9 on G. Now we have a funny little timing here. Okay, it's 7, 8, 7, hammer pull on the B string, down to 9 on G, and then back up to B, 7th fret, down to G, 9, 7, 9. Okay. Okay, let's just put that whole long lick together. It goes like this. Now we have, okay, a pentatonic type phrase. So we're on the G string, 7, 10, 9, 7. Come down to the D string, 9. Roll that 3rd finger up to the 9th fret of G. And back to the 9th fret of D. So 3 notes there on the 9th frets. Up to 7 on G. Back to 9 on D. 7 on D. Come down to A, 9, 7, 5. Okay, so nice and slow. And you'll notice if you can get a couple of pinch harmonics in there, it sounds nice too, especially the notes on the G string there. Okay, then we've got a harmonic. Okay, so I produce that by lightly laying my finger over top the 5th fret wire, and I hit the D, G, and B strings, or you could just hit the G and B, experiment with it. But I hit those 3 strings, and then I yank up on the bar to duplicate that sound on the album. And then I bar the 12th fret over top the D, G, and B again, and just slide that down. Okay, palm mute the 7th fret on D, hit that twice. Then a little grace note hammer, pick 7 on G, and immediately hammer to the 9th fret. Then 7, 5, back up to 7, 5, 4. Do a little 5 to 4 pull off, down to 4 on the D string. So most of this is on the G string, right? Now we have a little faster run. Okay, so slide into 9 on G, hammer pull between 7 and 8 on B, back down to 9 on G, 7, 8, 10 on B. Okay, so up to the high string, 7, 8, 7, hammer pull again, back down to 10 on B. Now you hear a little hammer between 7, 8, before we shift 8, 10, 12, hammer through those 3 notes. And then pull back off to 10, 8, end on the 12th fret of the B string. Okay, so nice and slow. A little bit faster. Okay, then you hear. Okay, so 2 chugs on the open A string, and then you want to bar the 9th frets on D and G, pull off to the 7th frets. Okay. 2 chugs on the low E, move those bars down to the 7th frets on D and G, pulling off to the 5th frets. Okay, so that's kind of an easy move. 2 more chugs on that open E before. On the B string, we want to go 12, pull off to 10, pull off to 8, slide down to 7. Okay, so let's put all that together. Okay, again, I hit those harmonics on the 5th fret and dive the bar. And then we're getting into the last little bit of this solo that starts. Okay, so we're going to start by hammering onto the 12th fret of the G string. This is all on the G string. We're just going to pick a note and pull off to the open G, and most of this is legato. I kind of just introduced the odd pick here and there, but you don't have to. You could do all of this strictly legato, where you don't even pick, anything. Okay, so start by hitting the 12th fret on the G string and snapping off to the open. And that's what this whole lick is just snapping off to the open after we hit every note. So start by hitting the 12th fret, go down to the 11th fret, and then to the 9th fret. Okay, now instead of counting how many times you're hitting that note, it's easier just to count eighth notes. Just go like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, okay, so it's 3 beats hitting the 12th fret, 1 and 2 and 3 and. Every time your finger comes down, you're just counting those eighth notes, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and. Come down to the 11th fret, 4 and. Down to the 9th fret, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So we've already covered 2 measures there, and we've only played really 3 notes, snapping off to that open string every time, right? And then we're going to duplicate that exact same pattern, another 2 measures, going 16, 14, 12. Okay, so we got 4 whole measures there already. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, now we're going to wrap this up. Okay, so we could make this lick easy just by going the 2nd fret to the 4th fret. Okay, but on the album you hear this 2nd fret, and then there's a little hammer between 12 or 2 to 4. Okay, so that's just the 2nd fret and the 4th fret. 1 and 2 and up to 5. Back down to 4. Okay. 5, 7, 9. Okay, let's play that last little bit slow. And again, I hit those 5th fret harmonics with some crazy whammy bar abuse, and that wraps up the solo. Okay, so now that we've went through the whole solo, broke it down, let's play it nice and slow with some scrolling tab. Okay, and there's all the parts of the song, guys. Everything after the solo are riffs that we've already covered. I'll just leave you with the outro. At the very, very end of the song, we hear that main riff kick in again, but we just play 1 measure of it and end on an E power chord. Okay, so no need to really break this down. We just start with that main riff, going to the low 6th fret. Jump down to an open E power chord stab, and that's it. So I hope you enjoyed learning this song, guys. It's got lots of going on, got lots of cool riffs, some down picking challenge. The solo is really cool as well. So have fun with this, take your time, and I'll be seeing you really soon for more.